So bear with me here while I pull up the screen. I'm gonna wait until I'm in there to screen share. So yeah, the big thing with this too is, you have to provide your sellers with a cost sheet, and there is no lender to help you with that. So today we're going to go over cost sheets. I forgot I hit record and then didn't say what we were going over. So we're going to go over cost sheets, especially seller ones. And then if we have time, we'll dig into some buyer ones as well. I just want to get past the personal information screens so that it doesn't flag us with the recording when we post it. Get into a blank file. All right, I'm going to share the screen. So in whatever system you use, whether it's Loop or whether it's SkySlope like I use, you'll want, if for Pennsylvania, it's a seller's estimated cost sheet. Is there anybody on here from Maryland today? 'Cause I didn't know what the Maryland one's called. And then the buyer one in Pennsylvania is the BEC. So we'll just add both of these here. All right, so we'll start with the seller one. So somebody throw out a purchase price.
$350,000.
All right. He was louder, so he wins. All right, so you put your purchase price in there first, or the list price. If you're doing the listing appointment, you need to be doing this at the listing appointment. So just put whatever you're listing it for in there. Then you'll come down the broker's fee. Pop quiz time. What's the broker fee amount for the mentees? Go ahead, say it.
$4.95.
There we go. Now, you can charge more, you just can't charge less, right? All right, then we need the calculator. Well, I need the calculator. There might be some of you who can do all this math on your own, but that's fine. So, preparation of the deed. This is done usually by an attorney or a title company, depending. And typically, I find that it's $200. That's one of the ones that's kind of just always the same. Okay. Transfer tax. Anybody know what percent transfer tax is?
1%.
Gonna wake you guys up with all these questions here. So sometimes I'll put that over here in this side so that the seller or the buyer can see those numbers and how we figure that number out, okay? But that one's easy math to do. That's $3,500, 1%. Now, if they're offering closing cost assistance or buyer agency compensation on the listing contract, at this point at least, you would put that in here. Personal preference, I like to estimate it on there anyway, right? So what is a common amount you see? Like if you're not offering it, if you're not saying, oh yes, it's 2.5 co-broke offered, and they're coming in on the offers, what is the typical amount you guys are seeing requested? I'd say 2.5, right? 2.5 is a pretty common number. So if I'm trying to make sure, especially if the money is going to be close, I will estimate that in there because how many offers really come in without asking for anything, where they're just the buyer's paying it, right? So realistically, I try to figure in something in there just to give them like worst case scenario numbers. So if we did 2.5%, that would be 8,750. That's 2.5%. Oops, I put that in the wrong line. So you can even put in there 2.5%. And you can even write in here like example, right? That it might not come in with that, but best be prepared for it. That way you're setting realistic expectations because it's very rare that the winning offer isn't going to be asking for some type of compensation. Home warranty, this would be if they wanted to purchase a home warranty to advertise that with the listing. In this market, that's not common. I have seen though in buyers markets where there are so many listings that they're trying to set them apart. So that's something for a different market. Municipal certifications. Trying to remember what I put in here. I haven't put in a while. Rossi, what do you put in for your municipal certifications? I think I usually put 500.
I don't put anything in until after I've completed the actual listing agreement. Um, which I was going to wait till you were done going over numbers, but the this form is not just a great form to be able to give your buyer or your seller um, that bottom line number, but it's also a great way for you to make sure that you are on the same page as your client. So, for instance, if we are looking at municipal assessments, when you're doing your XLS or in Maryland, when you're doing your listing agreement, you're going to have uh, pages and data on there that are also going to translate over to this cost sheet as well. So municipal assessments is one where I don't blanket put in something. I wait until after we've had the listing consultation, and then I know what actually is being assessed by local authority. For instance, sidewalks. Sidewalks needed to be repaired. Have that conversation with your seller as you're going through the process. And then if they've been given anything for an assessment, that can be provided to you to be able to go for like paperwork for the actual transaction itself.
Mhm. Yeah, I know I do more of the municipal certifications on the buyer side, right? As they're getting, well, that's like the tax certs and stuff. So we talked Thursday about slowing down the process and getting all the information, right? When you're looking at the certificate of resale with a condominium or an HOA, this is one of the things where you're going to be asking what that certificate of resale is going to cost. Have that conversation with the homeowners association prior to filling out this form. If you're listing a homeowners association home, you need to have a ton of things prior to getting it on the market. So I would just do my research and get that exact number in there. So I wouldn't fill that out. And I don't do a lot of HOAs anyway, so I typically leave that blank. The settlement fee, there's a couple fees at settlement. I usually estimate $100 in there. This is one of them. You'll just kind of get the hang of them as you see them and do them more and more. You'll get the hang of what typically goes there. And the best thing to do is after you've closed on a listing, go back and take your Alta or your closing disclosure and compare it to your cost sheet that you did. If you're in an area where you feel like some of these fees are more, like maybe deed prep's more or the settlement fee is more, then adjust to your area. If you're in an area where it's not a 1% transfer tax, like out towards Philadelphia, I know it's different. Adjust for that. But it's good to compare them and see how close you got at the end of the day.
And I want to
Notary,
just want to interject something right there, just because you just mentioned that this cost sheet is not something that you can just kind of throw random numbers on. You need to make sure that these numbers are as close as they possibly can be. So just random question for the group. When do you think a cost sheet should be prepared during your process?
I think it should be prepared a couple times whenever you're at the listing appointment and then whenever you're doing your presentation of the offers.
Excellent answer. Very good.
absolutely.
So you do your initial cost sheet to make sure that they have an idea of where they're going to be, but realistically speaking, there's an element of horseshoes and hand grenades to that whole thing because, like Brittany said, you're going to be rotating from different areas. just had a transaction that closed in Lidditz, and that had different county assessments than normal areas that I work out of. So as you're going through this process, you're going to prepare this cost sheet as part of that listing consultation so that they have some idea of where they're going to come out as a net. But then every time you present an offer, you need to do another cost sheet specific to that offer as well. Because one of the common things that I see is transfer tax. A lot of times buyers will be willing to pay both sides of the transfer tax in order to make the transaction more palatable for the seller. So that's why there should be repeated cost sheets being done before we actually finalize.
Yep. And when you're going in for compliance, like if you have a listing and you go in and you import it into SkySlope for compliance, they want this one that's done at the listing appointment. Whenever you change that to accepted a contract, it'll ask you for the updated cost sheet. So that's exactly right. And honestly, if you have multiple offers, this is a great way to simplify them. A lot of people it matters about the bottom line, right? Like they look at the different terms, the home inspections, things like that. But at the end of the conversation, they're like, what does this mean for my bottom line? So by having one of these prepped for each one, and I'll even like label them at the top and say like offer one, offer two, whatever way I'm organizing it. That way you can show them how each of them impact their bottom line. Maybe somebody offered less, but isn't asking for as much commission, and it actually nets them more money. It's going to be the offer that they want to take. Just because the purchase price is the highest doesn't mean it's going to end up with the highest net, right? So you have to take all those things into consideration. So this is a great way to do that. And that is a tricky part in all the systems is that you have to print them as you go and then go back in and manipulate things again. You can't prepare multiple because if the purchase price changes here, it changes it in a lot of the file, right? So you do have to like save them as PDFs or whatever you want to do so that they're all separate. I also do that like if there's escalation clauses, I'll put the different levels in there of where it escalates to. But we'll dig more into that with the buyer side. All right, so for notary fees, this is typically $25 a person, right? So if you have two sellers, I'd put $50. I was in a situation where I've seen four sellers. So just keep in mind, it's usually about $25 per seller. So we're going to say this one has two sellers. We're going to put $50 in there. Survey is something, I don't typically put on when I'm in that first listing consultation unless they're worried about some boundaries and they know they want to get a survey. But this is something, once the offers come in, if it's requesting it. Now, the opposite goes for the on-lot sewage system pumping. If a home is on its own septic system, if a inspection is requested, the seller has to pay for the tank to be pumped the day of the inspection. So if it's on an on-lot septic, I will always estimate, and in my area, the company that works in my area is $250 for a pumping. If I'm doing a listing that has an on-lot septic, I always put that on here to give them that heads up that they're signing off on that ahead of time and expecting it. Because there were a lot of times when I was starting out that I didn't do that, and then a septic inspection comes into play, and then I break it to them that they have to pay for that pumping, and they're like, well, you never told us about that. So I like to have that conversation up front and just put that on there as worst case scenario. If you're on public, leave that blank. You're good. But in the area I work, many, many, many homes are on private septic. So it's just better. I found that it's better to have that on there because it's something that's mandatory. If they've chosen an offer with a septic inspection, that's mandatory. Property repairs, if you're at the listing and you know that there are a ton of things that are going to need to be addressed, you can estimate that on there. But typically, I won't put that on here until, like, again, like an offer comes in, right? Because if it's conventional, there might be a lot less repairs than if it's FHA or VA, right? But if we know the water heater doesn't have the relief valve 6 inches from the floor, and all the GFCIs are not GFCIs, and we're getting an FHA or VA offer, then, I might put them on there. Tax certifications, again, I don't usually put anything on there. That's just getting those tax certs from like the township and all to make sure the taxes are paid up. If they have a mortgage on their property, the overnight express mail charges are what is charged for sending that payment to the mortgage company, whether it's a wire or they're mailing it. This form was definitely made when mail was still relevant. I get that now it's mostly wired, but wires have a fee also. So it's best to just put $25 in there. That will take care of that. Whether it's a wire or if it's mailed out, that's covered. And then the most important part is your commission. There are two ways to do that. You can, on this first line, put, your 3% commission and your broker fee and add them together. I've done it that way. But what I found after being in the mentorship program is a lot of the mentees like to put that commission part on its own line so they can see the division between the broker fee and the commission. So a lot of the mentees typically like to put commission here. And my commission on a listing is always at least 3%. Well, that would help if I put a 3 there. There we go, 3%. So 3% of that is 10,500. Whoops. Need to go over a line. There we go. All right, so that takes care of the top part. Unless there's any other fees that, they have brought up to you that would need taken care of. Adjustments here for real estate taxes, association fees, utilities. Typically at the listing appointment, I won't put them on there because here's why. We don't know when it's closing to know what the prorations for the taxes is going to be. So unless we're really, really close to the bottom line, I typically won't even add that in there at all. Now, if you're in a situation where they bought the house a year ago and they have no idea if they're going to make enough to pay off their loan, you can kind of partner with somebody who knows about that and get that on there. So there's the total of the closing costs from up above, the purchase price, subtracts it out. If they do know how much they owe on their mortgage, you can put that on this line. So let's say, for example, they still owe $290,000. Now they're walking away with $36,130. Obviously, if the house is paid off, they own it outright, they have no loans, you can leave that blank and you can see the total that they're walking away from. So it just depends on the situation. Typically, at a listing appointment, they're going to be able to access their account and at least know roughly what their mortgage balance is.
Brittany,
Yes.
my recommendation with the taxes is make sure that they've been paid, because when we're talking about prorations, that means the buyer's going to be reimbursing what the seller has already paid for that either calendar year for real estate or fiscal year for school district. Where you run into a problem is when you find out through the process they haven't paid their taxes in maybe the last 1 or 2 years, and they still haven't told anybody that they haven't paid it. But now you find out that that net is a lot lower and could compromise what they're actually getting back or they may owe.
Yes. And I was going to say that in general because we had a great conversation on Thursday about that section of the listing contract that asks about unpaid taxes, judgments against them, and back to child support, right? You should be making sure that you've went over that section and asked them. And then, cover your butt, have it written on there. If you've had a conversation and they do have some, if they say that they don't, put zeros in there, make them sign off on that they said it's zero, because that way you're not the one accountable. Like in that situation on Thursday, everyone's saying, did the listing agent ask if there was any judgments or anything against the house? Because it's their job to do that. Maybe the seller knew about it, but was never asked. So it's really important to know if anything's behind. And right now, tax bills are out. So this is also a great opportunity to say, I know you got your fall tax bill. Did you pay that already? Or is that something that still needs done at settlement? Because we're in that period where the end of August here ends that first period to get it early, the discount for being early. Then we head into the regular on-time payments and then the late payments. So as we're heading into these next couple months, ask that question, ask if they've paid that bill, and remember what time period we're in on whether it's going to have the late fees on it or not. Ask them for the tax bill too. Most of them will have it. If they haven't paid it, they have it. If they're older, like me, and paid it, they're going to have the paid stamp on there. And they're going to be able to pull that out of their desk and show you that it's been paid too. A lot of people keep them at least for a year or so. Does anybody have any questions with this form?
The other thing I might touch upon too, because I've run into this and it was never something really on my radar, is in the event, how did they pay, especially if they haven't sold in like, so they bought their house less than 10 years ago, we'll say that. Because I've had clients where they got the PHFA K-Fit or even the Dauphin County grant, and that needs to be paid at settlement. If they, for the PHFA K-Fit, if they haven't lived in their home for 10 years or more, they're going to be responsible for paying back that second lien.
Mm-hmm.
So I take that into consideration as well, because you don't want them to be surprised, like, hey, why is this $5,000 less than what you originally told me? Because there is a Dauphin County grant that they don't pay that off until they sell their home. They don't owe on it, nothing. They just pay it from the settlement sheet when they sell.
Yep. And the PHFA one is a 10-year forgivable. So it goes down each year that you're on there without you paying on it. But again, if you haven't been in the house for 10 years, that could definitely still have a balance on it. And this comes back to slowing down the process. You know, like if you know that they bought the house 5 years ago, make sure you're asking that question. Did you have any first-time buyer programs that you used when you bought the home? And slow down, call the lender, talk to them, find out those balances. It's okay to say, we're working on this. We just want to collect all the data possible so that we know exactly, what we're getting into. And they're going to
Yeah.
trust you more that way. If they're really pushing you, like, oh, I just need to get this on the market, I don't want to take time to figure this out, then something's up. They're going to understand, oh, yeah, I'm glad that you're checking that. I didn't think about that. And it shows that you're knowledgeable. So then, how many of you guys work with mobile homes? I'm going to do a seller cost sheet for a mobile home anyway, because I think everyone will come across it at some point. So what I do when I'm doing these, I go to the girl that I usually use is Paige. She has a fee schedule that's always up there, and it says seller fees right here for them. So I'll pop this up on one of the screens. I'm going to go back here and I'm going to clear things out though first, because mobile homes are completely different. So price for a mobile home, let's just do 70,000. It's an average mobile home, right? All right. There's no preparation of a deed. I want to clear out some of these. Wish there was just like a mass clear button. All right. So there's no preparation of a deed. If it's a mobile home in a park, there's no deed, right? There's no transfer tax of 1% because again, it's not on land. you can still estimate, people asking for some help, but let's figure out like even just at the 70,000. Clear this out, 70,000. 3% of 70,000 is 2,100. Now, typically the way I do mobile homes is if that 3% is not more than $1,500, I will word my listing contracts that it's 3% or 1,500, whichever is greater, right? So just keep that in mind when you're doing that math. If it's less than your bottom line on that listing contract, you need to put that amount in here. I've seen some agents do it for a flat fee of 2,000, like it's 3% or 2,000, whichever is greater. It's up to you. It's personal preference, whatever you want to do. And then same like for the co-broke, when I have seen them offered, it typically is a flat fee amount. But again, you can have that conversation with them. Obviously, at this price, we're still not really getting too low. So 2.5% of that is 1,750. So it's still over my base of 1,500. But again, it's however you want to do your business and however that is on your listing contract. Um, Maybe you have a conversation with them and they're just like, let's do $1,000 flat fee for the buyer's agent. Put that on there, whatever that would be. But you see now a lot of these are empty. So if we go over here, the tax certification fee, I typically like to estimate high. I will pick the higher number in these situations. But there's a bunch of fees. A separate signing appointment will be scheduled. Let's see, are unable to attend closing. So have that conversation. Are they going to be at closing? Because if so, that costs more money. The wire fee is a little bit less, but I'll just pick these higher numbers. So for the transfer tax, instead of transfer tax, this I'll usually put $75 on there for just the tax in general. Then I'll go back over 10 for the notary fee. That's $10 per person. So again, like if it's two people, $20. Let's see what else we have on here. 21 for the wire. So that overnight mail one, 21. And we'll do 70. Let's put 70 in here. This was courier fee. I don't remember how that was spelled. Is that right? No. Okay. Yeah, you in there. That looks better. Mhm. So now these are all the charges that are involved in that. I use Absolute Mobile Home Closings fee sheet because I find that hers is typically around average. But if you know of a mobile home title company in your area, feel free to reach out to them and ask for a fee sheet. I know a lot of people in the area also use Jason. What's Jason's last? Jason Malott. There we go. He's also really good at these. He has a fee sheet. It really depends on what you want to do. I just have always used Kate's because I know her really well, and that's usually who I recommend. She also has the buyer ones on here as well. But there's a lot less fees that go into selling a mobile home on land. So then you can see that breaks down. You'd again put whatever they owe, on their mortgage if they had one. A lot of times mobiles are more paid off. I find that less of them have mortgages on them, but definitely ask and make sure of that. And then again, ask them if they have property taxes too. Even though they're in a park and they don't own the land, they definitely still have taxes, and it depends on the area. I've seen this as low as $25, $40. And I've seen this go up all the way to $1,200 for property taxes, even though they don't own the land. So check that. Check the tax records, ask them if they got their tax bill, and make sure that all those things are paid the same as you would the normal listing a traditional home, okay? Does anybody have any questions with that?
In looking at those fees on that webpage, I jumped to it real quick. Um, on the buyer side, wouldn't there be sales tax?
No, nope, because
There's
it
not
is a
sales
home.
tax.
Correct. There is no sales
Okay.
tax.
Okay.
For a vehicle, there is, but it is still considered a home, so there is not a sales tax.
Gotcha. Thank you.
You're welcome. All right, so let's jump over to the buyer one. Because the buyer one's really important. If you're stuck on a weekend or your lender's on vacation, but they're not responding, I just had that. Must have sent 3 emails asking about a cost sheet for a property, and just not getting any responses. So it happens. First thing I do when I come in here is I'll do the purchase price. So somebody give me another purchase price for a regular traditional home. 275. It's funny because that was a number I had in my head. Really? When you said it, I was like, did you just read my mind? I was about to do that if nobody said anything. All right. So the first thing I do whenever I'm preparing a buyer's cost sheet, I have this flagged for Pennsylvania. If you're not in Pennsylvania, message us. We will figure out what to do on this. If you are in Pennsylvania and you have never had this link, send me a text. I will send you the link. But they have this amazing spreadsheet for us right here that makes the title insurance portion very easy to figure out. So this first page that it takes you to is any house under 250,000. And I'm super excited that you guys picked a number over 250,000 because if you click right here, it'll flip to this horrible green screen that blinds you at night when you're trying to write an offer. And you scroll down to the purchase price. So 275 right here. You see how it's 274 and like a penny to 275? Right in the column next to it. This one right here is when it's for sale. So if you see at the top, sale, non-sale. So you'll find the sale column, which is always the next one over, find the purchase price, and grab that number. Now, if this was $275,200, you would go down a row to this one right here. So any of them odd numbers, you're going to go to the next one down, okay? But for this one, it's 275 even. You'll grab that one. This is why, like for me, a lot of houses, right, are 269.9 or whatever. When I write them, I'll typically say, like, can we make it an even number for like math's sake? And usually people are fine with that $100, whatever. So I just hit copy and go over here and put that, man, that color change is rough. And paste that in there. All right, so that's the first step there. Does anybody have any questions with that website? Okay. The closing protection letter. This is just a letter that says that they've done all their title searches and they're good. It's $150. I've checked cost sheets at like Altas at the end of the process. That's on there. It's usually also on the lender ones as well. Don't know why. That's just the number. So that's one of the ones you can memorize and just know that's what it's going to be. Now, this took me years of going back to ones that I had done in the past and pulling those numbers from prior ones to put in here. That's completely fine. Or if you have questions and you're stumped, call me, call April, call somebody because we just have those numbers in our head until you get them and you memorize them. Title endorsements. This is what I was referring to earlier. That's the buyer side. This is them reaching out, making sure that there's no liens and nothing like that on it. All the taxes are paid and everything. I've been estimated when I started in this industry, we estimated $350 in here, but during COVID, all prices of these went up. So I now put 550 in there. But again, this is definitely one that you can put 550 in for now. But when you're starting to get altas at the end of the process, like keep them, right? So I bring my file back to the office for my check. It's got the Alta, it's got the final walkthrough, and it's got the checks. I give them to the person at the front desk. She scans them in. Mine's trained. She knows that I get my Alta back. There's multiple reasons for that. If I'm not here, she'll even put it in my mailbox for me, but she knows I want it back because I will verify it, check it, see what costs are different on my cost sheet. But then also, I put it in an envelope. I fold it up, put an envelope with my client's new address on it, and I put a stamp on it and I stick it in a box and I keep it. January 1st, I take that whole box and I put it in the mail and it goes out to them so that they have it for taxes if they lost theirs. There's nothing else really I need it for. It's on the file if I need it for anything else. So that's just what I do. So I have a process. I'll go home, I'll verify it to my cost sheet, see if anything's really changing, and then I'll get that ready for them. So you can also have your front desk person know to do the same thing. Stick it in your mailbox if you're not there, or hand it back to you when you're done rather than shredding it. Now, I've noticed a serious issue in my sky slope, and I have to call them about it because it's driving me crazy. So, if anybody uses sky slope and they're seeing this too, be mindful of it right now. Do you see under title endorsements what just happened while we were talking?
$5.50 to $5.
I have had this happening constantly. I wrote an offer the other day and I had to go in when we were doing the signatures and cross out like four of these dang things. And I think the same thing can happen in dot loop also. So be mindful when you're going through here that none of the numbers change because over the last 2 months, these have been changing on me like crazy. And it's super important, especially when you're working with the buyers who might only have X amount down, that if these numbers are getting changed in there, I had one that was $2,000 off the other day, and I'm glad I saved it before it got to the client. But just when you're done this, go back over it again. When you're doing the signature thing, go back over it again. Make sure that no zeros got dropped because this has been really screwing with me lately. Mechanic lien insurance, I've never put anything in there. Uh, for settlement and notary fees, again, notary is about $25 a person. Some settlement charges on there. I'll usually estimate for a two-person transaction, which is pretty common for me, $100. It's always best to estimate a little high because at the end of the day, if they need to bring less to closing than they expected, it's a happy surprise. They have more money to buy new furniture or moving, all that stuff. If you are low and they have to bring like $2,000 extra to the closing table, you're going to have some irritated clients. You told me that it was only going to be this, and that's a whole fit, right? So it's always best to estimate high on purpose. So as far as recording fees of the mortgage and the deed at the courthouse, for your area, you can reach out to your courthouse and ask them how much it costs to record the mortgage and the deed. I work in Perry and Cumberland County most. So in my area, that's $250. That's what I estimate. Now, I've also seen that this one attorney up home, he lives right beside, like his office is right beside the courthouse. He walks it over. He only charges 200. So it just depends on like who you're using. You can reach out to your title company that you're recommending, ask them what that fee is. But this is what I typically see. So that's where I put that. As for the transfer tax, in the contract, it's 1%. Well, it's 2% divided in half, 1% to the buyer, 1% from the seller. If your client wants to pay more of that, remember that. Like if they're offering to pay the full transfer tax, like Rossi had said earlier, this is where you would change that and put 2. Again, different markets cause different things. During COVID, we saw a ton of buyers offering to pay the full transfer tax so the seller got more money.
Where do you put that in your offer?
That is on page 2. I'm trying to think exactly where. It's right under the deposit part. It says about transfer tax being divided unless otherwise stated here. And that's where you write it. Yep, and that's where you write it. Yep, buyer will pay full 2%. In a different market, like let's say there's 1,000 listings and there's no buyers to buy them, sellers could also offer that they'll pay the full 2% transfer tax to get you to buy their home. Incentivized, right? I know we haven't seen that in a lot of years, but when I first got my license, there were all kinds of perks. Like there were builders saying, "Hey, we'll give you an extra $2,000 if you bring a buyer." But there were tons of different perks. Home warranties being offered. So keep in mind the market. If we start seeing way too many homes flooding the market, these are different things that your sellers could do to incentivize purchasing too. So, but this is where you'd put that. So just for argument's sake, we're going to go with the standard 1%. 1% is easy to figure out. 2,750. Make sure my numbers stay. Again, survey if they want the property surveyed, if there's any encroachments or something they're worried about, you'd put that in there. Domestic lien search. This is again like if they think that they have back taxes, you could, or I mean back child support, you could put that in there. I truly have no idea what Patriotic Act search is, so I just leave that blank. There's a blank spot if you want to do the commission that way. Like let's say they're going to pay their own commission, you can put that in there. Also, keep in mind, if you're requiring 3% commission and the seller is offering 2%, so your buyer is going to pay you the other 1%, this is where you need to be putting that. If it's not on here, the way the buyer agency agreement is worded is that you can't make more than 3% or whatever you have written there, right? So typically my buyer agencies say 3%. But if there's a house that's the co-broke and they're offering 2%, that's up to you whether you're going to ask for that other 1% or not. This is where that needs to be in order for it to count at the brokerage level for, they're going to really question you at the end of the day. If you tell the title company, oh yeah, my buyer owes me 1%, but it's not on here. So this is where you would put that. So for argument's sake, let's say that. Let's say this house is offering a 2% on the CBC, and you tried to ask on the contract for the other 1%, and they said nope, so you're going to charge it to your buyer. This would be where you put that. And you put that there. Nope, too many zeros. Whoa. All right, and then again, broker fee for you guys, it's at least $495, so we'll put the $495 on there. Insurance premium, first year premium. So as settlement, a buyer will pay for the whole first year up front, and then they will put some aside. So for a mortgage, the first mortgage payment, like let's say your client closed today, their first payment isn't due until October 1st. Everybody know that? So it's never the first month. It's always so if they closed August, you skip September, October 1st is the first payment. If you close on January 1st, the first payment isn't until March 1st. But if you close on January 30th, your first payment is also March 1st. Does that make sense? So in that meantime, there's a couple months there that we're missing, right? So that's where the lender will start that escrow, get that up and running. Because each month that you're making the mortgage payment, some of that mortgage payment is going to go towards next year's insurance premium. So at the end of the year, when the insurance bill comes out, the mortgage company is paying that right away. This is really important to explain because a lot of buyers think, oh, well, that's escrowed in my mortgage. I don't have to think about it at all. And they don't realize how that works and how they're paying that first month now so that or the first year now, sorry. That way it's good. And then the mortgage will take over every year after that. This is a great time to connect with an insurance agent and have a conversation with them on what the average, like you kind of know your price point, right? You kind of know what price point homes you're looking at. And if you, like for me, I'm around 300,000, 200 to 300,000 is my most common price. So what I've found in that price range in my area, this is about $1,300 for the first year. Okay, so I'll put that in there. But again, if you guys are trying to learn things, it is a great idea to meet with different business owners that play a part in what you do and have these conversations with them. If it's a $500,000 house, that premium's going to be more. So it's okay to reach out to an agent, get a quote, all those things. You can do that. You can also say, like, let's say you aren't sure what that's going to be. You can leave this blank and have them pick the insurance and flood insurance inspection part, right? There's no cost to that. They just call and get an insurance quote, but tell them, look, once you get that quote, we'll readjust this cost sheet. These cost sheets, again, are something that you can do multiple times for your client as you're figuring things out. And then you'll figure out 3 months of that. So at $1,300, too many zeros in there. You divide that by 12 and multiply it by 3. We're about $325. Mentally, I usually do 300, but yeah. So 325, that would be to get that escrow up and running. Now, as far as taxes, again, there's a lot of things that go into this. But what I do on my cost sheets is super simple. By the time they pay for the portion of the year that they've been in the house and their escrow getting started, what I find is by putting in the full tax amount for the year, you're covered. Your estimate a little high. It's never going to be more than the whole tax amount for the year, right? So I'll go onto Bright, I'll find the yearly tax amount, and then I just group it together in one instead of breaking it down into school, county, municipal. And I'll just explain that. Like, look, this is the taxes for the year. So at this price point, without looking at a house, we'll just say $3,500 for taxes for the year. Does that seem low? Yeah, that's about right. Typically, though, I'll go into Bright and I'll pull that tax amount for the year and I'll just put it right in there. And then explain to them that's not just the school tax, that's the whole year's taxes. By the time, the prorations and everything get settled out, you're about a year's worth of taxes into it at closing. Again, if you have an association, whether it's a homeowners association or a condo association, anything like that, you're going to pull them fee sheets and you're going to know what these are, right? So that's what you would put into those. Don't forget to put them in there. Your capital contributions, all of that. If there's an amount that's due up front, like a lot of HOAs will say, like, this much is due at closing, and then this is amount monthly after, or, quarterly, whatever. Put those in there. Then you've got your inspections. Obviously, if they waive all inspections, you don't put anything in here. If they are doing inspections, again, this is a great time. If you know an inspector that you are going to recommend consistently, reach out to them, get their fee sheet. Some of them are easy to find. I know one in particular that I've used in the past that's easy to find. I'm not saying I use them. I just know that I found their fee sheet multiple times on here because my inspector doesn't do septic inspections. So recently I was on here, Mike Shealy home inspections. Pricing, look at that. Bam. When in doubt, look it up, right? So this is one I know is online. I use Galaxy Property Inspections a lot. I know his fees, but if I have a question on one, I'll also just call him up and say, "Hey, how much is a radon test?" Because I never see them. Um,
He's gonna answer that.
he doesn't like radon tests, but yeah. So a big one that we don't see a lot is septic inspections. Um, does anybody know what a hydraulic load test is or when you need it? I didn't think anybody would. So if a home is lived in currently, you do not need a hydraulic load test. If the house has a well and a septic, um, well, I guess it's not just if they have a well. If the house hasn't been lived in several months, if it's a vacant property that no one's lived in, you want the hydraulic load test. So, for example, if the house is sat vacant for 8 months and no one's lived in it, you're gonna want the hydraulic load test. And the septic inspection company is going to ask you if it's currently occupied or if it's been vacant. That is where they run the water for a couple days prior to the septic inspection and they flush the toilets and they do things like that to test the system to make sure that nothing major went wrong while it sat not used. Because that septic had been used the whole time that it was lived in and now it's just sitting there with nothing going on. Other issues can come up once that water starts flowing through it again. There are different types. There was a company out of York that came up to one of my Perry County houses after it had been vacant for 3 months. And they put in this high pressure water system and shoved it through there. And no, the drain field failed because it's not used to that much water. So you do want to be careful. I've never had that problem though with Mike Shealy's. I do use them for my septic inspections. They just come out the day before, turn on the sinks, flush the toilet a couple times, and let those sinks run overnight until the next day when they come out to do their inspection. But that costs more. You see how it's $500 with the inspection. So just keep in mind those things. If you have any questions, whatever company that you are going to recommend, you can get their fee sheet from them. So if we go back to the form, let's say they want all of them. This is another thing. There's a lot of companies that will give you a bundle price too. So like for Jim, if you do the home inspection with the wood destroying insect, the home inspection is $290, the wood destroying insect is $40. So again, this is why communication with other people who have a hand in your process is so important because you're going to know these things. I don't like radon tests. We'll skip radon. A water test. Water, water, water. There we go. Is it a conventional loan or is it FHA, VA, or USDA? Again, also, is it a conventional loan? If it has PHFA on it, it's going to need these government-backed water tests. Okay? So basically, if they're just testing it because they want to know and they don't have to have it for their loan for some reason, that's the 195. Pretty much every other reason, it's going to be higher. It's going to be 275. And that's because they're going to look at more things. They're going to look at the full scope test rather than just, is it safe to drink? So I usually estimate it to 275. And then the sewer, depends on is it vacant or is it occupied? So for argument's sake on this one, we're just going to say it's occupied. And remember, you can even tell your buyer at this situation, you're paying for the septic inspection. The seller is paying to have that pumped so that you have a clean tank. This is another good way to get them to want to do the septic inspections because they're going to know that it's not going to need pumped for a while. It's just got taken care of. And it doesn't matter if they had that system pumped 2 months ago. The day of inspection, it must be pumped again and cleaned out, and they have to pay that. Just so you guys know. If they're getting a mortgage, because most of this cost sheet's definitely mortgage. We are over time. I just looked down. Oh my gosh. All right, I'll finish this up and we'll continue another day. Because most of the time this is, lender based. For the down here in this section, there's a lot of different things that break down on a lender's cost sheet. And let's be honest, it just gets confusing. There's so many different fees. So what I do in this section is I put 2,000 on the top. I don't know why this always works, but this always works. So you guys can write this down. Credit report and appraisal. Appraisal is about $650. Credit reports are about $100. I typically put $750 in here. And when I compare these to the lender cost sheets, by doing it this way, it's always really, really close to being dead on accurate. And then down here under miscellaneous, I will put in 1,000. Now I know that that's skipping a lot of these things. You can figure them all out, but they're complicated. Like I said, after doing this for years and looking at a ton of really confusing lender cost sheets, this way of doing it with the 2,000, 750, and 1,000 always gets this amount over here to be within like $100 or $200, which in my opinion is really good. So that's all you put over there. If you do have a mortgage, right here on this line, on this side is where you're going to put the loan to value ratio, right? So let's say this is an FHA loan. How much percent down is typically asked for with an FHA loan? 3.5%. It's okay. I ran over time. I'll blame it on that. It's fine. Um, so it's a 96.5% loan to value. So you take the purchase price, times it by the 9.965, and that'll give you the mortgage amount, which is 265,375. Anyway, that math, so from 275, you just times that by 0.965, that'll give you the FHA amount. If you're asking for seller's assistance, you can put that on this line. Another thing that I put on this line is if they are doing the PHFA first time home buyer grant, and I know that they're getting 5% of the purchase price for closing cost assistance, I will put that in there too. So I just times that 5%. Because a lot of times, if they're getting that first time buyer program, they don't need seller's assistance. So it's okay to put that on that line. 750. Again, but if you're asking for 6% seller's assistance, you can put that there. If the lenders told you before they don't need a full 6, they only need 3, whatever it is, put that on that line. You can put their deposit that they're putting down here. However, personal preference, I do not. And the reason that I do not put their deposit in here is because when I go over this, I tell them between now and the day you get your keys, this is the total amount of money that you're going to spend out of pocket. Several of these things are paid outside of closing. Your home inspections, they're all paid for at the time of inspection. So they're not at closing. The appraisal, that's paid at the time that the appraisal is ordered. So again, that's not a closing thing, right? So this is the due at settlement, and it's on here. So how I word this is all in from the day you sign the contract to the day you get your keys. This is the total amount of money that you're going to be putting out of pocket. That includes a deposit though. So why I choose not to put the deposit in here is because it looks like they're putting less out of pocket overall, right? Because their deposit is something that they're paying, 5 days after the agreement signed, and it comes off of the closing costs, yes. But I like this to be a full scope, everything all in, what they need. Because a lot of people I work with, we're looking at, maxing out what they've got in their savings, right? Especially if we're getting first time buyer grants and everything like that. So that's why I choose to do it that way. Does anybody have any questions with this? Another day, what we'll do is we'll do this same sheet if it was a cash deal. Because a lot of these, well, I can kind of go over it right now. Obviously, you're not going to have any help there. You're not going to have the mortgage amount there. You don't have fees for the loan. You don't have the appraisal. You don't have those fees. Maybe you still have inspections. So the only things that you take off is mostly the loan stuff down there. And then up here at the top, you don't have the closing protection letter. That's about it. There's a whole conversation with title insurance. If you're using Titan, get them to do the title insurance anyway. It's good to have. Some people will disagree and not do it, but that's the only way Titan actually gets paid is if they have title insurance. I found that out when I did a cash transaction, and they're like, well, if they want us to do this title work, that it's the same price regardless. So I keep that cost there. But again, talk to who you use for title work if you have any questions with that. But you see that there's a lot less things that you have here. Maybe they want to not put their, like, obviously they don't need the lender escrow for the insurance. I think that's it. You still have a recording fee because you're still recording the deed. You still have settlement fees, but this bottom section's what's empty. All right, guys, I kept you 15 minutes too late. Sorry about that. I'll stop sharing here. Does anybody have any questions at all? Did you learn anything? Okay, good. That's all that matters. All right. To be continued. Bye, guys.
Thank you.
Thank you.